Hello, my name's Olurotimi Osha. Today's still 4th of July, and it's the 250th birthday of the United States of America. What I want to do is do some readings. It's important to read the text of some of these very important documents. I have a reading of the Declaration of Independence, but I'm also going to do a reading of the Gettysburg Address of 1863 during the Civil War, written and read by our 16th president, routinely ranked as the best president America's always had. Now, I want to read the Gettysburg Address because Lincoln actually refers to the Declaration of Independence, and of course, after the War of Independence, it's interesting that you know Americans for the Civil War, the war that which cost the most American lives. That's the war that in which there's Americans have never been in a war which more American lives have been lost. So the Civil War still remains the deadliest war that Americans have been involved in. So more Americans died during the Civil War than in the First and Second World War and during the Revolutionary War. Now, of course, the July 4th, 1776 Declaration of Independence um, did not precipitate the war, right? The war had already begun. There were the battles at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. There was the Bunker Hill battle. So there was, uh, the Patriots had already started to engage British forces, and of course, the Declaration of Independence, declared, the formal severance of allegiance with the British Crown. Now, comparing the two documents, I prefer the shorter, uh, very monumental, very profound, weightier prose of Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. But of course, you can't really compare them. But I tend to love the writing of Lincoln. Uh, the Gettysburg Address was just 272 words, so that's But however, the Declaration of Independence, authored by our third president, Thomas Jefferson, is 4.85 times more. Has 4.85 times more words. So it's lengthier than the Gettysburg Address, of course, and the Declaration of Independence. So that's about 1,320 words. Um, but in any event, I'm going to read the Gettysburg Address now, and you can make a comparison between uh, the uh, the Declaration of Independence and the Gettysburg Address. Of course, they have two different purposes. The reason why I'm contrasting them, why I'm reading them, is, well, they're both um, fundamental, both very significant, monumental documents um, in American presidential annals, right? But also, it's like one is trying to take a measure of the other, whether we had attained how far. It was sort of a litmus test uh, of how much progress um, the mission of the Declaration of Independence had accomplished, right? And so, uh, like a continuation of the promises in the Declaration of Independence. So, without further ado, let me get to the reading. So, the Gettysburg Address, 19th of November, 1863, right? So, of course, this was 87 years after the Declaration of Independence. So, I start. Excuse me. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who were here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion, that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So that's the monumental Gettysburg Address, authored by our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, and first president, unfortunately, to be assassinated. You know, by from the bullet of an assassin. That's John Wilkes Booth. So it's interesting that this Gettysburg Address, I mentioned there were descendants. We have a president, Nixon. His direct ancestor, George Nixon, died at this battle, Gettysburg Address, and that his I think grandfather or his great grandfather or grandfather. That's George Nixon. George Nixon, the senior, was a patriot who fought in the Revolutionary War. So President Richard Nixon's direct paternal ancestry, they go all the way to the Revolutionary War, and they were at Gettysburg as well. Interestingly, the opponent of the Union forces, General Robert Lee, he came from the Lee family. Of course, his Lee family, the Lee family of Virginia, his family, that Lee family, two of them, of course, were signers of the Declaration of Independence. So it's there are people who do can trace their lineage all the way back to the Revolutionary Wars. So I'm going to sign off now. I was able to keep this under 10 minutes, and I hope we can get an appreciation for some of the consequential, documents of, in American history. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.